Hello and welcome. My name is Rosella Garcia and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Relations at Teachers College. Thank you for joining us this evening for another virtual event sponsored by Alumni Relations. This is one of the many ways you can stay engaged with your TC family. I'd like to quickly remind you of a few more ways you can maintain a meaningful connection with TC. Recruit TC's talented students and alumni through TC Next. Refer prospective students to the college. Show your pride by including Teachers College in all your professional credentials, bios, and even your LinkedIn profile. Share your expertise and time by volunteering to speak at a future event or joining one of our Alumni Association committees. And when the time is right for you, support TC financially by donating to the TC Fund. We're especially grateful for the TC alumni who share their knowledge and know-how through insightful presentations like the one we're about to hear, for all of the TC community to come together and learn. And now I'd like to introduce today's featured speakers, alumni Bradford Manning and Carmine Gibaldi, who will be discussing the business of doing good, what it means to be a social entrepreneur. Bradford Manning is the co-founder of Two Blind Brothers, a cause-driven fashion company on a mission to cure blindness. At a young age, Bradford and his brother Brian were diagnosed with Stargardt's, a type of macular degeneration that causes blindness over time. To fight back, they left their careers to start Two Blind Brothers, a clothing company that donates 100% of its profits to research. Bradford doesn't have a fashion background. Prior to taking his leap of faith, he worked in investment management. He earned his BS in Finance and Commerce and his MA in Psychology and Education at TC. Carmine Gibaldi is a tenured professor of management, organizational behavior, and entrepreneurship at St. John's, and is on the adjunct faculty at TC. He also maintains an organizational consulting and executive coaching practice and is a Fulbright Scholar. He has over 30 years of experience in the education and corporate consulting sectors. Carmine earned his MA in organizational psychology and his EDD in higher education from TC, and is currently the president-elect of the Alumni Association. In today's fireside chat, Carmine and Bradford will discuss some of the fundamentals of social entrepreneurism, and we'll hear more about Bradford's journey. They will be taking questions from the audience during the latter part of our event, so feel free to drop in your questions in the Q&A panel below. Be sure to join in and share your comments and reactions via the chat window as well, which is located at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical or audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know how we can help. Without further ado, please welcome Carmine and Bradford.
Thank you, Rosella. Appreciate it.
Bradford.
Bradford.
Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
Bradford, great to be with you today. Very happy. Just so everyone knows, Bradford and I have already previously met, and we became very fast friends. So we'll get that out of the way. Bradford, Rosella, in her opening, mentioned that your mission is pretty clear, to cure blindness, if you would. Basically, you use your brand to raise awareness, right? So of the disease and the proximity of the cure. So you commit your entire profit, right? 100% of your profits to research. And you also hire employees that are on the blindness spectrum. Now, given that, would you mind discussing with all of us what led you to a social entrepreneurial model rather than possibly beginning a foundation or a nonprofit?
So it's a really interesting question. And what I've come to appreciate about social entrepreneurship is that when it is done best, it's usually a side effect of something else. So in our specific example, Brian and I have had this condition since we were kids. There's been an organization, the Foundation Fighting Blindness, we were always very close to. And when we had this sort of moment of serendipity that involved us shopping and stumbling upon the idea of doing this clothing brand, we were doing it because we were passionate about it. We were passionate about having fun with each other and passionate about giving back to this organization we were very close to. And to your question about, well, what is the right structure for that? I mean, frankly, we should have been more thoughtful about that on the front end. I always say that we're not a great example for somebody who's starting a traditional business, because there are plenty of actual issues that we may or may not get into related to our structure. One of the things we ran into early on is that we weren't eligible to be a foundation because of something that they referred to as the commercial doctrine. I guess there was a big case many years ago where a nonprofit company that produced Bibles was competing with for-profit companies that produced Bibles. And I guess the law was settled that if you are competing with for-profit industry, just by nature of the fact that you are giving your profits away, that does not entitle you to be a foundation or a charity. And so we've looked at, there's some creative things we could do. Like you were saying, if you sort of commit your staff to a specific types of employees, or you incorporate certain types of educational materials, you can make that argument. We haven't done that yet. So that's why we started as an LLC. It was a structure that I was most familiar with.
Okay, great. And now given that, even though you sort of fell into being a social entrepreneur rather than doing it in a purposeful way, what I guess aspects of it have then made you successful? So, right. So either way, you're a successful social entrepreneur.
So there are a few things. One is that we live in this remarkable moment in time. Technology in the digital age allows people to connect with their potential community or customers in a much more nuanced way. If we were to start a clothing brand 20 years ago, to have an effective business, we would have to think about things like a mass inventory buy and a mass media buy that is watered down enough to speak to a mainstream consumer. The idea of starting a clothing brand with a very nuanced mission around blindness, even though we've been fortunate to find scale, you would never sort of prospectively go out to do that, and the upfront working capital would have to be so tremendous. So the fact that we were aiming small, aiming niche with a very nuanced message, that was an advantage, because the community that we were reaching, the customers that we were talking to, nobody was effectively speaking to them in the same way when you think about social media and paid digital advertising. The other thing that made us very successful was storytelling, and a few things specifically. The authenticity that we had connected to this mission, but also we had a friend who was a Starbucks barista by day, videographer by night, who made a 2 to 3 minute video on our story early on in our project when we weren't even sure how we were communicating what we were doing. He happened to have sort of a natural ability to sort of tell a story in video, and it really touched on it actually didn't mention the clothing whatsoever. I mean, it mentioned it, briefly, but it was really about the purpose, the mission, the reason we were doing what we were doing. None of it was scripted. It all came from answers that we gave when we were on camera. And there was something about that attracted, that attracted the community and some of the early publicity we got. The thing that we always try to tell people who are starting some level of consumer brand is that you have to rise above the noise. This is not something we understood when we first started, but there are so many people fighting for attention that the bar is usually a bit higher than people realize. And so crafting narratives, content, your advertising, whatever the messaging is, needs to be the most compelling thing that someone has heard that day. Otherwise, it'll get lost in the shuffle.
Sure. So to me, in a way, as you were talking about before, as you stumbled into being a social entrepreneur, big implications with being a social entrepreneur is communicating that passion through storytelling. So what the two of you did was actually genius and in a way what you're supposed to be doing. So that was sort of a great sort of confluence of events there, and glad to hear the power of storytelling. And you guys do have, you know, a quite powerful story. Now, you talked about marketing again in terms of not doing it in much of a purposeful way, yet you do have a marketing approach, right? You do have a specific strategy related to your marketing approach. You have celebrity endorsements. You do use social media. You have a concept called, quote, shop blind, which is sort of happening, I think, right now. And maybe you can explain a little bit about that. And again, we come back to, as you just already mentioned, the storytelling sort of component, which is, I'm sure, part of your marketing strategy. So if you could elaborate on that, be great.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because, you know, there's all these, you have to draw on sort of skill sets from opposite ends of the spectrum. So,
Sure.
you know, the experience from the consumer standpoint is they will see a Facebook, an Instagram ad, a TikTok ad, a YouTube ad of some very touching moment. An example is a second grade teacher bought one of our, we have a thing, bought one of our products, used it to explain, you know, our brand and this, and a concept related to trust. I'll get into the shop line experience, and the kids like lose their mind in the classroom. We got permission to use it. And it just comes into someone's feed like it's a natural sort of feel good piece of content. On the back end, I believe we have one of the more sophisticated direct to consumer advertising systems in place. We have a guy named Vincent, who's a director of marketing at T-Mobile, who assists us on all of our accounts. We have a very close relationship with Facebook, and to get that ad into the feed of the right person, there is a lot of science that goes into that. And so leveraging those soft elements, I mean, if you take an Ellen DeGeneres endorsement and she's like a celebrity, if you take that and you show that to like 15-year-old boys, you aren't going to sell anything, you know? So it's really interesting how like kind of specific and dynamic you have to be. And then I'll touch on the shop line experience only because it's been so transformational for our project. So basically this is a way that people can shop our brand, Two Blind Brothers. And it started with this idea. We live in this great world with all this technology. And Brian and I have seen it improve for folks with vision impairments throughout, you know, the past 2 decades. And despite that, the thing that kind of helps us the most is to turn to the person next to us and ask them for help if we can't see something. So if we can't see a menu in a restaurant, we'll ask a waiter for a recommendation. If we can't see the subway stop, we'll ask the person next to us to let us know when we get to the subway stop. And all of these little acts of trust lift us up. And so we thought, well, can we recreate this, you know, this kind of demonstration of trust with our brand? And it really started as kind of like a little experiment. Now it's the main way that people shop our clothing brand, where we say no products, no images, no descriptions, no information, just a price point and a question. Will you shop blind? Will you buy something you cannot see? All we can say is that we hope you're going to love what you get and that the profits from it go back to the foundation fighting blindness. And it's been like surprisingly successful, and the metrics on it are awesome. I think, and this kind of underscores a point made earlier, the novelty of it is worth a lot. The fact that Gap, Target, Bonobos, Bombas socks, Casper mattresses can't replicate that message actually makes it get way more traction in the ad platforms when we talk about it.
Sure. That's great. Thank you. Now, and thinking about your time at TC, let's go back a little bit, right? How did your education, your experience at TC prepare you for creating Two Blind Brothers, particularly given that my course wasn't offered at the time?
Well, yeah, and to be fair, I wish it was, because we made probably way more mistakes than we ever should have. And a lot of these things we've learned retrospectively. But the thing that, it's so funny. The thing, I went into teachers college because I wanted to, I have a deep passion for psychology. It's something that I was interested in from an academic standpoint. It's something that I helped my friends with when the opportunity came up. I thought it would be a great, career for me, just given my passion for it. And, you learn a lot of things, especially some of the courses I took in the counseling psychology department, a lot of the listening skills, a lot of driving at the emotion. This has become paramount in our business. One, we think about it a lot on the marketing side, but we also do a ton with the blind and visually impaired community. I talked with the American Federation for the Blind earlier today. We talked with National Federation for the Blind last week. We talked to different blind schools and agencies. And, it really rips us up when we hear the story of some kid or some parent that feels like life is over because they have this vision challenge. And we feel like we were able to navigate that and figure some things out. We're very passionate about being able to share that. And I think that a lot of the things that we learned at Teachers College, not we, because my brother didn't go to Teachers College, but and therefore he is less helpful in these circumstances. But we get to then use this platform to help communicate some of those things, and they're really about, a lot of them are about not letting the visual challenge become a psychological challenge for those who are in this community.
Right. Well, great to hear. So in thinking about Two Blind Brothers as a social enterprise, where do you see you guys in 3 years, 5 years, in terms of growth, other implications, or are you not looking at longer term planning?
Well, my brother and I will have divorced each other, and he will be dead at the bottom. No, I'm just kidding. But
we'll edit that out. Don't worry about it. We'll take
yeah,
it.
please, yeah, of course. The one thing that I've come to appreciate is that the needs and the opportunities in this project seem to change every 3 to 6 months. When you grow, this is, I guess, general sort of startup business insight, but when you grow like 30% or more, something breaks. You either need to hire a new person, or the fulfillment center you're working with can't keep up with volume, or the production issue, or, it's so dynamic. One of the benefits of this particular project is the fact that we didn't need to reach a particular scale to have it be successful. Obviously we weren't committed to just put tons of our own working capital into the business every year infinitely. But what we did believe is, once it got to a scale that we thought was appropriate and we could dedicate time to growing it from there, then we weren't accountable to some venture capitalist who needed us to be, $100 million a year in sales. And so our growth trajectory might be different than somebody else who's sort of followed a different structure. What I do think, and what we hope to do, is we hope that we can be an example for other people who are looking to build a niche or a brand or a community-based organization that they are extremely passionate about. I think we are a good example of the fact that you can actually reach some level of success with a nuanced message. You can find your community in a highly efficient way. And even though I think our clothing is awesome, I'm very biased, I think it's incredible. if you assume it's not, there's nothing really about our project that's differentiated other than our story. And there are a lot of good stories out there. So we hope we can inspire sort of that next project, and obviously keep growing what we're doing, while that's happening.
Right. And again, to your point, you and I actually had discussed that. I think that's a great sort of indicator for a lot of people thinking about going into social entrepreneurship, or even just becoming entrepreneurs in general, that the scale, the amount of money one might bring in is not necessarily going to be the single determining factor, that you can do it at different sort of scales or whatever. And I guess to that point, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, to that point, what then advice might you have for those people kind of tuning in, whether they be students, alums, any of us?
I would say that it has to start with absolute sincere passion. Social entrepreneurship, if Two Blind Brothers was gone tomorrow, I wouldn't be starting, some brand that spoke to California wildfires, not because it's not a worthwhile cause. It's just there are causes that are much more close to my heart. And so the fact of the matter is, there are things for the folks who are interested in something like this that they are crazy passionate about, or a community that they're very, very close to. I think the thing that I can tell them is that the market for it is actually, when you're already starting small, or this is a niche mission, you're not aiming for the stars. I think we were surprised at how the market's a little bit bigger than you might think. Because I think there's a lot of parallels in social entrepreneurship with media. Decade or two ago, it was just the big cable news, news sources. Now, it's a guy with a camera in his room, or all these YouTubers. Your market can be as small as the people who think you are interesting. Now, I think there's a lot of people who fail at that, but the fact of the matter is, if you are absolutely passionate about it, you're having so much fun with it, you would almost be doing it regardless of the success, then you're on the right track. And if you can communicate your passion behind it, that's critical.
Great. And I guess connected to that, maybe you could speak a little bit to, how did you and your brother kind of supplement or complement bringing in the necessary skill sets that you guys didn't necessarily have? Because that's always a problem when someone thinks they can carry it themselves and they need to know everything to do it.
I try to tell people to if you believe in what you're doing, and it's fine to start small. And actually, one kind of important point about our story is, we did this on nights and weekends and in our free time for 6-7 months. Then we got a call from the Ellen DeGeneres show. Then we had NBC Nightly News and an endorsement from Richard Branson. Then we're in a different situation. Okay. Now it's not like we're taking time from our full-time careers and burning the ships, as they say. We have more, we're sort of looking at each other thinking, how often in life do you get momentum on something that you're so passionate about, and especially, this type of early publicity on it. So we ran it very incrementally until we saw that it was kind of working. And during that period, that early period, we were making a lot of mistakes. The best thing that we've done is talking to people who have done it before. They would solve problems for us instantaneously. We met with the founders of Bombas Socks. They told us to use this email marketing firm. Done. Brian was making our emails and they were horrible. So we fixed that immediately, my brother. Yeah. We needed a new production facility. This guy named Andy, who ran an online retail store called Huckberry, told us exactly who to work with. So actually just going to those people and getting it, the person who taught me all of our social advertising strategy, just making sure that you are tapping your network for the people who actually have answered these questions before. You have to take it all with a grain of salt because there's a lot of opinions, but inevitably you'll get some valuable answers.
Right. And I guess in doing so and bringing other people in, did you get assistance in building a business plan as well, or were you able to do that, given your background in business and finance and so on?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very loose, because we see things that change. I mean, it's so unpredictable. I mean, and this holiday season is a great example of that. Because of COVID, e-commerce is doing extremely well because brick and mortar isn't open to take all those consumer dollars. And, if you try to model some of this, you're better being able to react exceptionally fast and plan for contingencies, more than marrying yourself to the model or the business plan. But we have gotten a little smarter about that as we've gone on.
I mean, the two of you sound like you're doing a great job. Have created a very successful, agile enterprise, and certainly enjoy having this conversation with you. So I appreciate you being with us. I think what we're going to do now is get ready to shift to some questions from the audience, students, alums, and so on. I have a few questions that have already been sort of pre-sent to me, and then I have some questions.
I'm so glad you received those. I'm so glad I was able to get those to you.
That's a wink. No, we're not supposed to tell anyone. That was just for our previous meeting, but it's all right. We'll edit that out too. So implications. One question in from someone in the audience that we received a few days ago. What lessons, and you might have covered this somewhat, but what lessons have you learned from your experience in finance, particularly, I guess, that you've applied to Two Blind Brothers?
The biggest thing is, obviously it's very important to have some level of business intuition or business skill set, understand a little bit, about, what you're putting together. I would say the biggest thing that we've had to plan around are working capital issues. So if we want to sell several $million of items in November and December which is the best time of the year, we got to buy that in, we got to put those purchase orders in place in June. And, there's risk associated with that, but then there's also just understanding that, the longer you can delay some of those, the longer you can put off having to pay for that inventory, the better off you are. So there's a few specific places where it's been helped. If we were raising money from venture capitalists, it'd probably be more helpful. But it gives me enough credibility so that my brother will let me make a lot of the decisions on that, which whether I'm right or wrong, it's nice to at least use an argument from authority and just tell him that we need to do it this way.
Sure. And without the venture capitalists, you don't have to kind of owe anyone, which is a nice place to be. Sure. Yep. Thank you. Another question that was sent to me is, if you could go back in time, and it says tell yourself one thing, what would you say? I guess in terms of doing something over again.
Spend 3 to 6 months doing nothing but networking with people who have just gone through what you're trying to go through. I wish when we were starting this off that I had taken all these direct-to-consumer brands, all the ones that we all know, finding the highest person on the ladder I could reach and just taking them out to lunch. That would have saved us from switching lots of production facilities, starting with products that weren't the ideal products to start with. Just gather your information. It's funny because it's what I give when people ask for career advice. I say the same thing. You want to go be a psychologist or mental health therapist or whatever it is, or a teacher from Teachers College. Talk to the most successful teachers that especially the ones that just recently successfully navigated the transition that you're going through. You can definitely talk to people who've been in the industry for decades, but it's very interesting to talk to people who just literally solved the problem that you're trying to solve. That's what I wish I would have done.
Sure. Okay, good. Much appreciated. I'm sure lots of people, particularly starting out, greatly appreciate that. Uh, let's see, what else was sent to me? I think you already answered this. What is next for Two Blind Brothers? When I asked about your 3-5 year plan, do you see your clothing line changing? Do you see expanding possibly into something else as well, or some related
So we
other
have,
clothing issues?
yeah. So the big initiatives we're looking at now. So this Shop Blind challenge represents basically 90% of our sales now, which is almost an insult to everything we did on the clothing brand side. So apparently when we take out the images, the information, and put no information about the products, we sell 3 times better. So, so here are the major questions we're trying to figure out in the business. One, is that particular challenge going to fatigue? Are people going to get tired of doing that? And then how do we innovate on that? 2, it really is a great campaign for getting attention. Our limitation is kind of like maybe audience and existing brand awareness. So can we find partners? Can we find a big retailer or another brand that maybe has incredible distribution and an existing base, but has struggled to get attention on what they're doing? So those kind of collaborations are something we're focusing on. We are developing a lot of products. One of the things is with these, I'm getting like into the technical aspects of it, but when we do our shop line experience, when we want to sell a shirt, we need to know the gender and size of the person shopping. So we have a little selector that pops up so we ask you what your gender and size is. When we are selling something that's like a single SKU item, like a beanie or a scarf, or a candle, we don't need to ask that question. And actually we get a 25% better conversion rate when we don't have to ask your size and your gender. So we're working on a lot more single SKU items, blankets and scarves and socks and all of those types of things.
And do you think people don't want to put the extra time and effort into sort of moving through the process? It's kind of interesting.
I think it's two things, which is one, as soon as we start asking them about the size, then instead of thinking about it like the Shop Blind Challenge, they start thinking, is this going to fit? How's it going to look? It gets them thinking about other things. And then just as a sort of cardinal rule of e-commerce, the less steps to check out, the better. I mean, as silly as it is, you lose 50% of your customers between add to cart and completing transaction. That's kind of like an industry rule, but it's just a weird thing that happens.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Now I'm taking a question just sent to us live. The question states, it's from an anonymous attendee. Can you please say more about how you put emotion in your marketing, i.e. leveraging psychological triggers to drive more sales?
Man, I could talk about this for a while.
Go right ahead.
So one is, it takes some practice. So it's funny, when Brian and I did like our first news interview, it wasn't smooth whatsoever because we're in our head trying to make sure we're communicating correctly. Over time, if you have this person's asking because they have something that they want to know how to communicate something. As you share it, as you answer questions on it, as you like kind of put it out in the world, it will get better over time. For example, it is very hard to talk about the impact of research dollars. It's not binary, or it's not linear. It's not like you give 5 grants and you get 3 therapies. Oh, we've donated X amount of dollars, which gets us this much clinical research hours. We were at a dinner raising money for this cause, and somebody stood up and they said, I'm raising money because when I walked into the doctor's office 20 years ago, and the doctor said, you have an eye condition, there is no cure, go home, learn Braille, and best of luck, because I don't know how to help you. I'm raising money because that is unacceptable. And we want to change that message from there is no cure to there is hope. And that is a much more compelling way to talk about why we have to fund research, to give hope to that next family that's facing that condition. So that's just an example of, you really try to get in touch with the real emotional reason about behind what you're doing, why it actually matters to you, and understand that you are a messenger. Okay. It's not about, you got to forget about how it's making the brand feel or you look or whatever it is. You are a messenger on behalf of that cause. If you can really get in touch with that, that's what helps Brian and I a lot.
Mm-hmm. And it seems to be where you and Brian are powerful messengers, separate and apart from the money you raise and donate, both kind of having an impact on that message that you were stating. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we love to be proud of the money we've raised, but truthfully, one good major gift from somebody could dwarf, what we're doing. What to your point, I do think, and we enjoy it. We didn't have a lot of people growing up who had the eye condition that we have. And so we see it as a unique opportunity for us to be able to, we're a consumer brand. If we wanted to, this is what's so ironic. It's like, if we wanted to actually make the biggest dollar impact for research, maybe we go start, the next AI technology, or become a partner, our hardest to become a partner at a hedge fund, and then donate a portion of our wealth back to that cause. I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that, the reason we're doing this is because we enjoy it so much. And we think that the brand awareness, i.e. the empowerment message for the community, is where we can kind of punch above our weight.
Great. Now I have another question. Thank you. Another question just came in. It states, can you tell us about how you're working to make an impact among the blind community beyond donating your profits to research? So I guess.
So it's an incredibly important question. And it's actually something that we were naive about when we started. Once we started to get a little bit of publicity, we realized that we were 150% connected to the communities, the organizations that have been kind of speaking to this community and working in this community, since way before we were born. And we were lucky because initially one of the big things was the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind, which has actually now since been merged with a similar organization, but they hire 70% blind and visually impaired workers to do all the cut and sew manufacturing they did a lot of government contracts, and we worked with them for a while. Now we work with a similar organization, Industries for the Blind. And basically whenever we get the chance, we do whatever we can. We work closely with Guide Dogs for the Blind, American Federation for the Blind, National Federation for anything of the blind. I think we've hit, but and by the way, it's the most fun part of what we do. I mean, the fact that, we have this platform and can actually raise the mood, or maybe put a little inception in some young kid who's really struggling with this, and tell them our story or an anecdote. It's a lot of fun. And so, we do try to spend as much time as we can there. So we have production facilities that work for the blind and visually, that hire the blind and visually impaired. We do a number of like event sponsorships, and when requested, speaking for those organizations. We've done some specific campaigns for Guide Dogs for the Blind and AFB, and obviously a lot for FFB, our main charitable partner.
Great, thank you. You mentioned Richard Branson before. You want to elaborate on that? You just sort of dropped his name. People just dropping names. Go ahead.
So he's the man. I'm very fortunate. I've gotten to know him a little bit because we had some friends that were connected to him through his island on Necker Island. I ended up having a lunch with him. I got to play a game of chess against him. And the way I was like dying inside to talk to him. I was like dying inside to talk to him and to ask him about this is when we were starting the project. So just in its infancy. And I was too nervous to ask him. And then a friend of mine who was down there, he said, no, what you need to do is say, hey, I want to get your advice. Richard, can I borrow you for a second? I want to get your advice on something. So that's what I did. And so he did three. So his advice itself, we actually didn't. So he said two things. He goes, you should turn Two Blind Brothers into a hashtag and just have your brand be the hashtag. Maybe it's brilliant. At the time, it didn't strike me as brilliant. So I was like, it really made my mind do jumping jacks to try to figure out what I was missing with that idea. But the second thing he said, he goes, this is all about media. It's all about publicity. You have to do as much. You are not in the clothing and apparel business. You are in the media business. You have to get attention on what you're doing. And I said, well, on that note, would you, could I give you a Two Blind Brothers shirt? And can you let me know what you think about it? So he came up with the idea. He goes, I got a better idea. He goes, you're wearing your shirt right now? I go, yeah. He goes, I'm taking my shirt. He goes, I'm ripping it in half and I'm putting your shirt on and you're spending the rest of the day with no shirt on and we're going to film it. And I said, okay. So that's what we did. He threw his shirt, he put on my shirt, we filmed it, and it gave us a lot of credibility early on. I'm very very grateful to him.
Wow. Very, very, sounds like he was very generous in terms of time and spirit. I hope you let him win the chess match, by the way.
Well, I play a lot. It's a recent pattern. I play a lot of chess. And so I was sweating before we even sat down. I made like one move. He's a great player, but he just plays on instinct. He wasn't a student of the game. I make one move and then he started hurling a lot of 4-letter words at me. And, but I realized that the longer the game went, the more time I got to spend with him. So it was a really great back and forth game.
Good. Wonderful story. Wonderful story. A question just sent in. Do you think you would have had as much support from others if the business weren't embarking on a social entrepreneurial sort of space?
Nope. The answer is no. We would never give ourselves that much credit as to be able to run the business like this. We've experienced some privilege in a few ways. One is our customers have been extremely forgiving when we've sold out and we're late on a shipment. If we sent them an email, they're much more forgiving and they've been very patient when we've needed it. It's gotten us, the Ellen Show wouldn't have had us on. The counter of it, the other side of it is, Brian and I aren't making any money from this, so it's not like we benefit from that side, but in terms of our mission, in terms of the mission and what we originally set out to do with this, the charitable aspect has helped us tremendously.
Right. So to that point, so you mentioned your brother, Brian, and yourself are not, quote, making any money. You do have paid employees within the context of your enterprise, even though you're donating, because there were some questions around, quote, profit issues and how can you give away money? How can you sort of run a business if you're giving away 100% of your money? So maybe you could explain that to some.
Yeah. Folks. So unfortunately, it's not a very fun or exciting answer, but so when we were giving 100% of our profits, when we set up this project, we had no aspirations of it growing beyond the small community. And it's really, really easy to give the profits away when it's not really making money or it's really small. So now we have a new issue, which is that we are an LLC. So if we are giving 100% of the profits away and we make a lot of profits, not only do we give 100% of the profits away, but we also have a tax bill associated with that. So this is a new thing. You know, we've sort of hit a big inflection point in the last year. So we're sort of figuring that out. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer. We talked with Newman Zone, the salad dressing company. They give 100%. They give their profits away, and they actually have some very specific, legal structures they use to be able to do that effectively. So we're actually in the process of looking at that structure. And so Brian and I, we do some residual work outside of Two Blind Brothers. I still have a small role at the investment firm I worked at. Brian and I are on a minimum wage salary at Two Blind Brothers. If we were starting from scratch, we would probably have thought about it a little differently.
Right. Okay. That's in part, I think, what needed to be addressed, but sure, I appreciate you addressing that. Someone had sent a question in a few days back regarding maybe some of the major obstacles you first encountered, you and Brian, as you got started.
One is be very careful about working with your younger brother. But actually, you know, I've been a co-founder on a previous business. You know, making sure you have the partnership right, and basically, you know, a lot of the times it's not the bad deal or the bad business decision that tears a lot of these companies apart. It's a bad relationship with the founding, the founding team, the founding partner. Brian and I are very lucky. I always joke that we have 30 years of fighting with each other, so we're pretty good at navigating that. But that is a very important thing. Figuring out what is we made that crystal clear. Look, this is about our relationship comes before this business. So if there is an issue or somebody has a deal breaker, we have to do our best to be very mindful of that. Some of the other things that have been tough is, especially when you're starting something new, you're gonna make mistakes. The way we approached it is just being very candid and genuine, using ourselves as the brand. I mean, we speak as the brand. It's just one step away from being called, Bradford and Brian Manning. So, understanding that our reputation is tied up really aggressively in this, helps us make the right decision, most of the time. And so those are some of the things. And then, I just, from our other points about just getting as much great advice, asking good questions, specific questions to people who have just lived through them. That would be what I would suggest, starting from scratch.
Thank you. Now, earlier you mentioned someone had sent in a question a couple of days back, and then you referenced storytelling, obviously, as being an implication. This individual is asking how much personal information / story, I guess, would include in addressing, their story. How much should you reveal, I guess, in storytelling?
Well, to be honest, it's interesting about that was the big risk for Brian and I. It wasn't so much on the business side, because we were managing it in a very small way until we got some publicity. The bigger question is, do you want to brand yourself as Two Blind Brothers for the rest of your life, right, in the context of all the potential career opportunities and dating opportunities, and how hard do you want to own this label? And for the fact of the matter is, if Brian and I hadn't lived our lives facing issues related to that particular challenge, we would never have been comfortable doing that. I mean, that's a very, very tough question to answer in the hypothetical, but I would say this. Vulnerability is at least if you are in a less differentiated type of business, like you're in a restaurant, you're in a clothing business, not like a gene therapy or a technology that you have a patent on. Vulnerability is one of your big advantages over lots of other big competitors. I mean, they are unable to expose themselves in that way. And if you can actually, and there's this interest, I don't know who came up with this quote, but the more personal, the more universal. You know, people have this idea of a facade, and that's gonna, you know, you're gonna put these nice values in it, and your message is gonna scale because you've sort of checked all the right boxes. When you're vulnerable and you're personal, that's what draws people in. So you know, just it doesn't have to be all at once either. You can you kind of refine your message over time, and you can kind of figure out the best way to sort of communicate it. And I don't, maybe that's helpful, but that's the way that we approached it.
Sure, that's great. And I guess, you know, each individual is different somehow. As you studied psychology, and is going to feel comfortable revealing more versus less, and so on. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. Just had a question sent to me. How did you access and or expand your networks to help access and build upon your existing skill sets?
In several ways. One way is, you know, just organically, because we had I'm a big believer that if you are starting something small or a startup, having a connection to a big organization. So for example, you know, if you're starting like you're starting a business, whoever your first like our natural sort of quote unquote, like big client or big resource, you know, was the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And so that big national organization has an incredible network. So our first customers, where all the board members and the trustees and the people in the community, the first speeches we ever gave were at the, you know, the fundraising galas that they did. So one tactic is to think about who benefits from what you're doing the most. Not just generally like, oh, customers are going to like the soft close and the mission, but actually because we're giving all the money to them, the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So that's a warm lead. And then the other point to make is that most people love to give advice. I mean, you think that you're taking something from somebody by getting their time and asking them a question. You're actually giving them something. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel purposeful. You know, I'm probably enjoying the chance to share all this more than anybody who's listening to this. I mean, it makes you feel good to be able to share something that you know about the world. And so I would say, you know, obviously certain people are harder to reach than others, but in general, like I did with Richard Branson, asking somebody if they'd be willing to share a minute or 2 or 10 of advice, you'd just be shocked at everybody will say yes.
Right. Sure. Thank you. Yeah. And maybe related to what you were just saying, another question just came in. Do you find yourself drawing on your psychological training in your work on a regular basis? And if so, in what way?
All the time,
Yep.
all the time. I mean, this is all about, especially in the position, you know, with Brian and I trying to be sort of out there on behalf of the brand, you know, it's a lot of self-awareness and a lot of emotional intelligence. You know, you'll get asked a question about bullying. You know, they'll say, well, how do you deal with bullying, you know, when you're visually impaired? And it may not be something that you've thought about recently or in depth. And you know, to be able to kind of be in touch with your emotions, either because you're that type of person, or you've learned it through because you have a background in psychology, or because of all the people that you've worked with. You know, for us to be messengers, it's been very, very important. You know, understanding management is all of this. You know, I mean, when you're working with people and vendors, you know, there are always conflicts. And, you know, being able to understand where somebody's coming from, you know, seek first to understand, then to be understood. You know,
Yep.
a lot of that, all those listening skills. I mean, that's huge.
Sure. And it sounds like you and Brian are also a great support network to each other. You find that you kind of coach each other after kind of going through certain experiences, say, how did you experience this? How did I, kind of consult with each other in a way, support each other. You can learn a lot from your younger brother, by the way. I'm a younger brother, but I'm just putting that out there. But does that happen?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're definitely different in certain ways, but 95% we're very similar. And that probably maybe, if you were hiring the perfect business partner, you would want somebody who just was full of the complementary skill sets
Mhm.
and could approach things in a unique way. In this circumstance, it's probably helped us because it just lets us move more quickly and communicate. We kind of know what each other are thinking without having to really, analyze it. And but yeah, we have very candid feedback, with each other. He's a sales guy at heart, in the sense that he's so fun. He's a great communicator. If we ever do a speech, he does the closing, because he'll make me cry on stage with what he'll say or something like that. But he's been very, we have a give and take on this stuff. We're very candid. Some of our toughest moments are if one of us screws something up and the other one calls the other one out. We're also very quick to forgive. Sometimes it's hard to resist, getting emotional about something, but it's just really important
Sure.
how you follow up from that. How
Right.
do you then kind of go back and resolve it afterwards?
Sure. Well, great. Thank you. And look, in dealing with social entrepreneurs, I always realize that, in a way, like with your enterprise and Brian's, that in a way your goal is to eventually go out of business,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's it. A cure will be found, and awareness will be heightened to a certain point, and so on. I'm being cued to get to final remarks from Rosella, but thank you very, very much, Bradford. You and I will obviously speak again and do some things together again. But again, I appreciate your time and sharing all of that with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
both so much. This has been just a really wonderful conversation. Bradford, you're amazing.
Well, to be honest, this is the first thing I've ever gotten to do without Brian. I mean, thank God he's not an alumnus. And then number two, to be honest, a lot of these questions are not the questions we get asked. We are usually talking about our journey with the eye condition, maybe a few things around branding, but this was really, really interesting. To anybody who's interested in social entrepreneurship, that obviously there's something there beyond the business. Otherwise you wouldn't be, interested in social entrepreneurship. Find that thing about that mission that is unacceptable to you and why it's the most important thing to you or your project, and get in touch with that. Make sure you can communicate that well, and don't be afraid of being too small. Do it because it's fun, it's purposeful, and you'll be shocked at, the opportunities that come about because of it.
Those are really great closing remarks. And I loved hearing how meaningful this experience was to you. I think Carmine and Carmine, you were also really great at fielding that and adding your expertise. And I know that you're selling yourselves a little short. I think the folks tuning in today have really learned a lot. And I know there were some chats that came in just to us panelists and others that were shared a little more globally. But people have really enjoyed hearing your words and have loved learning about you. We even had someone tuning in from Greece, stayed up late to learn from you. So we're just really grateful to the two of you. And to those of you at home, I just want to remind you to stay tuned through our emails and social media for details on our future TC alumni events, including Making the Most of Corporate Conflict, a virtual event with alumna Allison Walling-Chaney, which will take place on November 24th. We hope to see you online again soon. And until then, thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and maybe take a chance and shop blind.
Fantastic.
Thank you
Thank-
so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Bradford.
all.
Thanks, Alumni Relations.
Happy Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful holiday and keep selling.
Thank
Right.
you. Yes, good. Fingers crossed.